Cancel culture striking again. One Detroit public school board voting to remove Dr. Ben Carson's name from a public high school over his political views and affiliation with the Trump administration.
What? Hello everyone, in just a minute I'm going to reveal to you some video clips of why Dr. Ben Carson was booted from the building. But before I do, let me give an introductory of my case for Dr. Ben Carson. If you value America, then this is a must watch with a much needed overwhelming response because cancel culture is out of control. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Unfortunately, evil has triumphed because there are so many good men doing absolutely nothing. This woke campaign was launched in 2018. However, I've been following this story since 2020. And without hesitation, I wrote the Detroit School Board, the City Council, the Mayor, and the Governor of Michigan to voice my displeasure and warn against this politicized mockery of our First Amendment. I don't care if you are a Democrat, Republican, Independent, or Libertarian. This should cross all political lines because this honorable and educated man represents the United States of America. So let's make this video go viral by liking, sharing it far and wide if you feel Dr. Carson was unjustly misrepresented. Here are a few video clips to set the tone for my case for Dr. Ben Carson. Take a look.
Cancel culture striking again. One Detroit public school board voting to remove Dr. Ben Carson's name from a public high school over his political views and affiliation with the Trump administration.
The Benjamin Carson High School of Medicine and Science scrapping Dr. Carson's name last month and are deciding on a new name now. Dr. Ben Carson joins us now as the former Housing and Urban Development Secretary under President Trump. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for being with us. You're from Detroit, sir. You're one of the nation's most prominent black surgeons. You're a former cabinet secretary. This looks wholly political in nature. Did the decision by the board surprise you or upset you?
It doesn't upset me, and I'm not surprised as I see woke culture infiltrating every aspect of our culture now. And I hope people realize how absolutely destructive it is to demand that everybody have the same thinking process. And, you know, one of the things about America is the liberty, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of association. And when we try to teach our children that political ideology is more important than academic achievement, we do them a great disservice. So I don't feel bad for me. I feel bad for the students who are being indoctrinated in such a way. What does that mean for the future of our country?
Yeah. That's a good point. Do you plan to challenge the name change at all? I understand that you say you're not bothered by it, but for the sake of introducing diverse political thought, would you want to speak out and question the school board?
I think that would be something somebody else should do, quite frankly.
Dr. Ben Carson is a stand-up gentleman that happens to be black, but he's an American, which puts us all under the microscope. If you believe that everyone is entitled to their own opinion to support whomever they please under the First Amendment of the Constitution, whether you agree or disagree with that individual, our Constitution gives us the right to express our beliefs, and consequences should not follow because you disagree, and using hate speech as a cloak to justify punishing. You see, this is what makes the cancel culture so dangerous. Biased propaganda can ruin a person's reputation in the eyes of the public, careers, and even threat of life because of a difference of ideology. Those in authority who make and enforce laws, legislations, have taken advantage of their power to remove historical statues, monuments, and names from buildings because of politically correct pressure from people who don't understand or cherish our Bill of Rights. Today is Dr. Ben Carson, who is affected by this gross negligence and drunkenness of power. Tomorrow is you, your sons and your daughters, their sons and their daughters. You get the point. This doesn't just end with Dr. Carson. It's only the beginning, if good men and women stand by and do nothing. I digress. I always knew there was something evil lurking in the waters of our government, but I didn't realize how sinister until what I call the 2020 wake-up call of Fauci to Frau's gain-of-function pandemic, mostly peaceful protests, and a guy dead in the basement. Dead, I tell you, named Joe Biden, getting more votes than President Obama and any other president in history. Yes, that guy that told Black America, if you don't know if you're for me or Donald Trump, then you ain't Black. The ridicule, vicious attacks, and cancellation all stems from TDS, Trump deranged syndrome, caused by 24/7 propaganda mind control. So what is Dr. Ben Carson's crime? Let me lay it all out for you. Supporting a president that did more for the Black race than any other president. Here's the notable evidence of President Trump's efforts to improve the Black community in a New York Post article titled, "How Trump, Not Biden, Has Helped Make Black Lives Better." And I quote, his recent police reform executive order, the First Step Act, released thousands of people from jail, 90% of whom were Black. He has promoted opportunity zones that incentivize private investments into marginalized communities, and also increased federal funding to historically Black colleges and universities by 17%, a total exceeding $100 million, more than any president in history. Meanwhile, the Obama administration infamously removed a 2-year Bush administration program that annually funded $85 million directly to these prized institutions. End quote. In addition, under Trump, Black unemployment was at an all-time record low. Trump asked for the Black vote. He didn't take for granted, and neither did he assume, like the Democrats, that he was going to get our vote just because we're Black. He didn't invite booty-shaking Beyonce to the White House to pander the Black race. He rather invited into the White House Black pastors, leaders, politicians, sheriffs, entertainers, and activists to get a better perspective on the state of the Black community to help better serve the Black race. Trump appointed Dr. Carson over HUD housing because Dr. Carson lived through the HUD housing nightmare, but overcame the struggles as a kid in a single mother's home to become one of the most accomplished neurosurgeons in the world. Trump is America first, meaning he's not for billions of dollars going to Ukraine and other countries while millions of Americans suffer. Trump does not support men and women's sports. And for all of you so-called Christians, Trump told Christians to attend Easter service during COVID while the entire country was locked down except for quote-unquote essentials. Trump supported closing the border. But as a result of Biden's open border, we see the ramifications of Biden's reckless policies. I can go on and on, folks, but people can't tell you why they vote for Democrats other than saying Republicans are racist. I remind you, this is Dr. Ben Carson's crime, supporting Trump policies that served all Americans, even those that despise him. This is why they whitewashed his name, why they removed his name for supporting America first. Ladies and gentlemen, the disingenuous media incapable of telling the truth want us to believe that America first is racist. But I say, even the primitive ape of the animal kingdom cares for its own. However, humans in America, supposedly more intelligent life form, have been brainwashed into hating the very country they live in. Meanwhile, we have a black woke mob plotting to and succeeding in canceling one of the most brilliant but humble neurosurgeons of our time. At the age of 33, became the youngest chief of pediatric neurosurgery in the U.S. He performed the only successful separation of conjoined twins joined at the back of the head. He performed the first successful neurosurgical procedure on a fetus inside the womb. He performed the first completely successful separation of type 2 vertical craniopagus twins. Also, Dr. Carson developed new methods to treat brain stem tumors and revitalizing hemispherectomy techniques for controlling seizures. He wrote over 100 neurosurgical publications. He was given numerous honors for his achievements throughout his career. They would make a movie called Gifted Hands to portray his life story. So why are these accomplishments not breathtaking to the Detroit School Board? A school board that was predominantly black? When I read the reason why they set in motion to cancel Dr. Carson, I shook my head in disbelief, and I was sickened. The reason was printed in the Black Historical Essence magazine online, seemingly with great delight. And it said, because Dr. Carson associates himself with President Donald J. Trump. How childish. The Washington Post would title their hit piece, quoted from one of the black school board members, and I quote, Ben Carson High is like having Trump's name on our school in blackface. Detroit member says, end quote. This is just one example why Detroit never gets any better. Can you imagine if black, wealthy, influential people like the Obamas, Oprah Winfrey, Jamil Hill, Colin Kaepernick, LeBron James, Snoop Dogg, and the race-baiting club that includes Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, Benjamin Crump, Don Lemon, and Joy Reid, who are living the American dream? Imagine the positive effect it would have on a little black boy and girl with no direction, seemingly no way out of the ghetto, giving them a positive vision of the world instead of squandering a golden opportunity on the world stage by spewing hate, bitterness, unforgiveness, ungratefulness, social injustice illusions, and pushing the agenda that America is a racist nation. Is there racism in America? Absolutely. But racism comes in all colors. Just because you're black, God does not give you a pass. My black race has been prostituted and hustled, and the payment in return is to keep the black race angry, outraged, complaining, and focused on white supremacy, white privilege, white oppressors, and systematic racism as we ignore the self-inflicted undoings of the black community like fatherlessness, teen pregnancy, abortion, black-on-black murder, domestic violence, crime, drugs, incarceration, illiteracy, and school dropout. This is disheartening enough, but what is more shameful and disturbing, Detroit is ranked number 2 on the list of the top 10 most dangerous cities in the U.S., but their main priority is to strip away the name of Dr. Ben Carson. Detroit has been a Democratic city for over 60 years. And speaking of Democrats, this Democratic duo named Lyndon B. Johnson and Margaret Sanger systematically and involuntarily dismantled the black family with a well-planned out scheme to deceive the black race to voluntarily destroy themselves. It's been said the Democratic Party mastered the art of deception so well that Adolf Hitler would visit America to learn how. Booker T. Washington spent time in slavery as a little boy, so it's safe to say if anyone had a reason to complain and cry victimhood, it would be an impoverished black boy coming out of the bondage from the massa. After the Emancipation Proclamation, Booker T would hitchhike, walk many miles, and live homeless under a bridge with no food to eat, all for the opportunity to get an education. Meanwhile, W.E.B. Du Bois, on the other hand, never spent a day in slavery and lived lavishly his entire life. And if he were still here in 2024, he would fit right in with all of the black wealthy race baiters. See the symmetry from then until now? The only difference is we went from chains of slavery to slavery of the mind. Apparently, we didn't take note of the United Negro College Fund's iconic motto, "The mind is a terrible thing to waste," because we have wasted years blaming the white man for what we could have done ourselves. Booker T. Washington sums up the travesty we see throughout the black race in real time in this quote, and I quote, "There is a class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public, having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles. They have grown into settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays." Some of these people do not want the Negro race to lose their grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. End quote. In other words, they do not want to see change. In conclusion, this is beyond understanding. My heart is heavy and overwhelmed with sadness. We have become a society separated on Christian principles and core moral values, a culture where there are no absolutes, limitations, or boundaries. This is not Democrat versus Republican. This is good versus evil. It's not even about a race, but about a patriotic, law-abiding, productive American citizen. If you are concerned about the state of our nation and the future of our children, then you must respond to the call and support Dr. Ben Carson, a man of impeccable character, by making your support known by commenting, liking, and most of all sharing to bring awareness to prayerfully overturn this caustic assault on our First Amendment and Dr. Ben Carson's right to exist. By joining this fight with your support brings us one step closer to saving our nation. May God bless America, a nation in distress. I write to fight, 1776, rewind.
Watch him explain what happens in the human mind every time you touch a card.
Sound waves had to leave my lips, travel to the air, enter your external auditory meatus, travel down to your tympanic membrane, set up a vibratory force, which travel across the oscles of the middle ear to the ovum round with a central vibratory force. Distorted the microcilia, converting mechanical energy to electrical energy, travel across the cochlear nerve to the cochlear nucleus at the pontomedullary junction, from there to the superior olivary nucleus, ascending bilaterally up the brainstem to the lateral meniscus to the inferior colliculus and the medial geniculate nuclei, across the thalamic radiations to the posterior temporal lobes, begin the auditory process, and from there to the frontal lobes, down the tract to retrieve the memory from the medial hippocampal structures in the memory bodies, back to the frontal lobes to start the motor response at the bed cell level, coming down the cortical spinal tract across the internal capsule, into the cerebral peduncle, descending down to the cervical medullary decussation, into the spinal gray matter, synapsing there, stimulating the nerve and the muscle. So you could point to that card.
You took the words right out of my mouth.